Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our Market Access and International Approvals webinar series. My name is Crystal and I am part of the Certification and Approvals technical staff here at Vista Compliance Laboratories. We will be going over South America's market access for electronics and wireless products, specifically going over radio type approvals and equipment homologation schemes of countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Venezuela, and more. Vista Laboratories is an EMC and RF compliance test lab and product certification body, and we are experts in global regulatory approvals for radio frequency devices. So today, we'll be going over the requirements for radio frequency and telecommunications approvals in South America. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the major topics necessary to understand before getting your radio devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in South American countries. If you have any questions on the topics presented today or any other immediate questions regarding compliance testing and product certification, please reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Without further ado, let's begin the presentation.
Today we'll be talking about 10 countries in South America, and without further ado, let's begin the first one, Argentina, ENACOM. So let's take a look at the brief overview here. What is ENACOM? ENACOM is the agency in charge of standardizing the communications equipment in Argentina. One of the main functions of ENACOM is to approve both equipment that makes use of the radioelectric spectrum, including those of broadcasting, as well as those of specific use in communications that connect it to public networks. For this, it complies with the following linked activities: not only equipment register, but also the companies that manufacture or market them in the country. ENACOM is the agency in charge of standardizing the communication equipment of the Argentina Republic. This standardization is based on the assurance of type approval based on various technical requirements. User safety, efficient use of the radio spectrum, ensure compatibility with authorized networks and communication systems. ENACOM approvals are a mandatory requirement for any device that connects to telephone lines, such as telephone, fax, or that utilize radio frequency spectrum for the transmission of information, such as cordless telephone, wireless routers, cellular phone, or Bluetooth device. This also includes information technology equipment ITE, such as computer system or smartphone, or any other electronic device that incorporate wireless technology. There are 3 certification schemes for certifying equipment and obtaining permission to market or use it in the national territory of Argentina. The most common scheme is homologation. It is the formal compliance verification and certification based on the applicable CNC standards. Argentina does not accept foreign test reports, except FCC or CE test report for GSM technology. And the last common one is codification. It is similar to homologation, but for equipment that does not have specific technical standards. Equipment undergoes verification, but without in-country testing. The last one is authorization. Basically a use permit that's restricted to a person or entity, normally only applicable when importing equipment specific to individual uses applicants. The information corresponding to the approved, coded, or authorized equipment is recorded in the material register. Basic information such as manufacturer name, product operating frequency will be available publicly. The certifications are valid for 3 years and can be renewed. Certification requirements for ENACOM. Testing, it must be tested in country. FCC or CE test report are not accepted. Samples required 1 to 3. Lead time is usually around 60 weeks, depends on the time. Documentation, product specifications, user menu, sales brochure, schematics, block diagram, circuit schematics, internal and external photos. Test setup instructions. Local representative is required. The applicant must be the local importer, and only Argentina importers can homologate the equipment. Certification is valid for 3 years and the renew are permitted. No additional testing is required for renews, and the certificate number doesn't change. Renews generally take less time, roughly 4 to 6 weeks. Need declaration of no change in equipment.
We're going to go over labeling for Intercom. Mandatory considerations. Mandatory markings for all radio equipment, including radio modules. Equipment without it are considered non-registered. The CNC label was changed to the new Registro de Actividades y Materiales de Telecomunicaciones, Ramatel, registration number, and SIL logo. We have an example in the far right corner. You're required to have an ID number, remains the same, even if the renewal application is submitted before the certificate expires. E-labeling is allowed. Requirements. Label should be printed in a permanent way, ensuring visibility of the mark. Minimum font size must be 3 points. Trademark, model number, serial number. Yearly updates. Satellite spectrum changes. On April 30th, 2025, Resolution 640/2025, Enacom redefined spectrum usage to reduce interference with personal communication services, PCS. The redefined mobile satellite services frequency ranges are 1990 to 2025 megahertz for Earth-to-space transmissions, and 2170 to 2200 megahertz for space-to-Earth transmissions. This update allocation is in the National Frequency Plan CAB-FRA. This calls for immediate technical and operational adjustments to ensure that your device remains compliant. Other interesting updates. VHF/UHF devices approved a new technical standard, Enacom-Q2-60.21 version 24.1 for fixed and land mobile devices. Devices previously approved under the old standard do not need retesting. Private trucked radio systems, Resolution 640/2025 incorporates the use of the 414 to 415 MHz and 424 to 425 MHz frequency bands for private trucked radio systems, SRCEP.
And this is the end of the Argentina. Now let's move on to the next country, Bolivia. ATT is the Telecommunications and Transportation Authority of Bolivia, which has mandated type approval requirements for wireless and telecom products. So that means every radio frequency device needs ATT type approval unless there is a frequency expectation for the device operational frequencies. The purpose is to verify the compatibility of the operation of equipment with the telecommunications network according to national standards as well as international standards adopted in Bolivia. It is mandatory for telecommunications equipment radio frequency devices. Examples such as modems, wireless telephones, transceiver terminals, television broadcasting, power amplifiers for radio frequency, and transceivers and transmitters.
Certification requirements for ATT. Testing is not normally required in Bolivia at this time. Therefore, we can use existing international test reports for the homologation process to obtain a certificate of conformity. Acceptable international testing reports include CE and FCC test reports. Technical documents will be reviewed and validated in the certification process. Modular family and system approvals may be possible depending on the characteristics of the equipment. So local testing is not required, as FCC and CE compliance reports are accepted as proof of compliance. Process takes 5 to 8 weeks. And in-country local representative is not required, but an agent registered with the ATT agency must make the application. In Bolivia, the certification of your device is valid for 10 years. For products that do not require ATT type approval, the agency will provide a no homologation letter to have for your records so as to avoid any issues with customs upon importation of the equipment to Bolivia. Here are some yearly updates for ATT. November 6, 2024, ATT updated the RF application and type approval process. Resolution ATT-DJ-RAR-TL LP 539/2024 and replaced the previous resolution from 2023. Type Approval Certificate, TAC, extended validity period of certificates from 5 years to 10 years. This update does not apply retroactively to existing certificates. New registration requirements. All companies must register with the ATT's registration of suppliers and commercializers before applying for homologation. A new online portal is being established for managing registrations and homologation requests. International test reports accepted. Bolivia continues to accept international reports such as FCC and CE for the homologation process, meaning in-country testing is not required.
So that was the brief overview of Bolivia. Now let's going over to the next country, Brazil. Anatel is the telecommunications regulating agency in Brazil. Products that connected to the public telephone networks, such as network routers with E1 WAN ports, Wi-Fi 802.11 ABG and access points, GSM and CDMA cellular phones, network switches, as well as satellite, Bluetooth, and Zigbee products require Anatel type approval to commercialize in Brazil. And there are 3 product categories. For Category 1, terminal equipment intended for use by the general public for purpose of accessing collective interest telecommunication service, such as AC-DC adapter used with cell phones, wired phones, cordless phones, lithium batteries for cell phone. For Category 2, equipment not covered by the definition of Category 1 products and that make use of the frequency spectrum for the transmission of signals. Examples such as antennas, amplifiers, transmitter, transceivers, radio frequency device such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, RFID radars. And for this category, it requires product testing. For the product category 3, equipment not contained in the definitions of category 1 and 2, and that will have interoperability with telecommunication networks. For example, cables, data network equipment, switches, hubs, gateways, interconnection networks equipment. For this one, the certification is valid until the device is modified or regulation changes, and also it requires product testing. There are 5 schemes for conformity assessment. First one is the conformity assessment scheme applicable to homemade products intended for individual use, which does not grant the right to authorize the commercialization of the product in the country. Second, exceptional cases such as new technology where it may take more than 3 months to issue DOC, and is the conformity assessment certification document that applies to Category 3 telecommunication products. 4 is the conformity assessment certification document applicable to Category 2 telecommunication products. And 5 is the conformity assessment certification document applicable to Category 1 telecommunication products. There are 2 certifications for telecom: Anatel Homologation Certificate and OCD Technical Certificate. For Anatel, homologation certificate is issued by Anatel, and there is no expiration date. It is issued to the local representative. For OCD technical certificate, it is issued by OCD, designated certification body, and may have expiration date depending on product, typically issued to the manufacturer, the owner, or the design. Product Category 3 revalidation or renew is required only if Anatel changes the regulation or if the customer changed the product. For renewals, in-country testing is required in renewal if product change, there was EMC test failure in original homologation, product is applicable to safety requirement in Resolution 529, and regulation change. Document needed for renewal. Sample needed if testing is applicable. Internal and external photo. Declaration letter from manufacturer confirming no modification occurred since original homologation. Please note that OCD technical certificate will be renewed, but the homologation certificate will remain the same. Here's the certification requirements. For testing, it must be testing in country. FCC or CE test report are not accepted. Samples are required. Test setup instruction is also required. For documentation, authorization letter, manufacturer, applicant, and factory information, internal and external photos, product label, technical specification, user menu. For user menu, if the product is destined to the end user, Portuguese language is mandatory. If the product will not be commercialized directly to the general public, English or Spanish version of the menu is acceptable. In case of presentation user menu in English or Spanish, please also send the letter declaration product for technical use attached. And the next one is schematics. If the electric schematics will not be provided for confidential reasons, a declaration must be sent according to the model declaration of electrical schematics. Assembly factors, similarity ladder for family models. Family grouping, it is necessary to check case by case, presenting the pictures external and internal, and the letter of similarity, explaining the similarities and the difference between the models. If the models, for example, are different externally but use the same RF module, it is possible to perform complete testing for one of the models, such as RF, EMC, and safety. Just few additional tests for the other models, such as EMC and safety. This is just an example for reference. In order to confirm precisely, we need to check case by case, and also other application forms. Please note that local representation is also required. Now let's talk about labeling. Homologated products must have Anatel's identification seal legibly and indelibly affixed to them. The 5H identifies the product authorization by means of a numerical series characters. AA identifies years, and 6F identifies the product manufacturer. Please also note that the required statement on the menu. In case the product is too small, it is possible to issue a letter asking for the authorization to put on product only, the Anatel ID, and the complete label on the user menu. Other user menu warning statement may also apply.
Here are some notes on e-labeling for Anatel products. Electronic labeling is permitted for devices with a suitable interface, such as a display or configuration screens. E-label access must be intuitive and require no special tools. The OCD designated certification body must approve the labeling method during certification. Technical conditions for e-label access. Be accessible within 3 steps from the main menu. Require no password, plugin, or special accessory. Be implemented at the factory and not modifiable post-market. Remain stored after factory reset. Be referenced in the user manual and at the time of purchase. Be supplemented by a physical reference within the user manual or packaging. Here are the yearly updates for Anatel. Anatel issued significant updates to RF application requirements, mainly affecting mobile and Internet of Things IoT devices. Key changes include the prohibition of 2G and 3G only equipment, additional standards for emerging 5G, major regulatory simplification. Other updates include Act Number 2921, effective March 27, 2024, defined new technical standards for personal mobile services repeaters that use 4G and 5G. Act Number 423/2024 formally authorized the use of ultra-wideband UWB devices in vehicles. Act Number 17865 updated the technical requirements for human exposure to electromagnetic fields CEMRF, aligning Brazil with the latest international standards from the WHO. Act Number 5155 replaced prior acts and defined new testing and compliance requirements for mobile phone chargers.
And this is the end of the Brazil and Anatel telecommunication. Now let's take a look at the next country, Chile. Subtel is the telecommunication authority of Chile, mandating approval requirements for wireless and telecommunications devices. Equipment homologation is mandatory for all radio frequency and telecommunications equipment. Examples such as portable transceivers, wireless telephone, RFID products, radio alarms, communication system for medical implantation, equipment used as radar system in vehicles, and Zigbee devices. Certification requirements. For testing, RF equipment in-country testing is not required. For telecom equipment, in-country testing is required. Hardwired devices that connected to the telecommunications network, such as analog telephones or fax machines, must be tested in-country. Documentation needed. Certificate. Test report applied to the equipment to be approved. Photographs of the equipment to be approved. User manual. Technical description. Local representation is not required. No module approval, only certification for end products. Lead time usually takes up to 30 days. Validity is permanent and family models allowed. You can have at maximum 8 models per certificate, only if the test report shows that models and if they all have the same output power. And if the product is modified, it will have to re-certificate.
Here are some yearly updates for Subtel. RF applications requirements for short-range devices, SRDs, transition from mandatory certification to self-declaration, QR code labeling. New rules come into full effect on February 22, 2026. New self-declaration. Exempt Resolution Number 737 overhauls the compliance framework for SRDs, like devices using Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and RFID. New systems shift responsibilities to manufacturers and importers to verify compliance and provide key information to consumers. QR code must be at least 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter on the product packaging. QR code must link to a Spanish webpage that contains technical specifications, commercial and contact information for the manufacturer and local importer, downloadable test reports to demonstrate compliance with Chilean standards, and a formal DOC. MICES got an update on the regulatory rules covering frequency bands and power specifications.
So that covers Chile Subtel. Next, we will be taking a look at Colombia CRC. CRC, Communications Regulation Commission. It is the communications regulating agency in Colombia. All voice cellular products, satellite equipment, and products that connect to the PSTN, which refers to Public Switched Telephone Networks, require CRC certification. Most radio frequency equipment does not require approval in Colombia at this time, for those products exempt from approval. All other products can utilize a letter of voluntary approval from the CRC, in which they state that the product is exempt from type approval requirements and may be imported and sold in Colombia. Certification requirements. Testing is not required. Documentation needed. Certificate of compliance of technical standards issued by a certification body or accredited laboratory. This certificate must state that the cell phone complies with FCC technical standards. Part 22, Subpart H, and FCC Part 24, or its technical equivalent. The certificate must also certify that all equipment comply with the exposure limits established in the IEEE standard C95.1 standard or the ICNIRP on safety levels with respect to human exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields. Copy of the manual or documentation with the technical specification of the specific equipment model, including the frequency and power ranges in which it operates. Labeling specification of the equipment to verify the relationship between the terminal equipment model in reference and the associated FCC compliance certification code. Local rep is not required. A lead time usually is 4 to 6 weeks for mandatory products, 1 to 2 weeks for voluntary products, and no logo or marking are required.
Yearly updates for CRC. Updated technical standards for terminal equipment with Circular 162 on June 2025. Expand scope of fixed and satellite phones, adding new frequencies 2500 MHz to 3500 MHz for 5G, aligns requirements with 3GPP and other international standards, clarifies responsibilities for importers and manufacturers. Unlicensed devices, automotive radar, Resolution 153 of 2024, published by National Spectrum Agency, ANE. It regulates the technical conditions for automotive radar operating in the unlicensed 57 to 64 GHz band.
So that covers Colombia CRC. Next, we will be taking a look at Ecuador. Arcotel is the agency for regulation and control for telecommunications of Ecuador. Equipment homologation is mandatory for wireless and telecommunications products. The objective of the homologation is to prevent damage to telecommunications networks, avoid technical disturbance to telecommunications service or their deterioration, avoid harmful interference to the radio spectrum, and contribute to an optimal quality in the provision of telecommunications service. Institution issuing the homologation certificate. The Telecommunications Regulation and Control Agency will issue the homologation certificate, which will be the generic for each class, brand and model of telecommunications equipment, exempted if the output transmit power of any radio device is below 50 megawatts EIRP. If exempt, voluntary approval letters can be obtained. If desired, for radio communication products with an output transmit power higher than 50 megawatts EIRP, certification is mandatory. Certification requirements. For testing, in-country testing is no longer required if Arcotel recognized certificate is available, and if equipment certification does not correspond to any of the accepted international organizations, in-country testing is mandatory. Documentation needed: user manual, technical specifications, application form, photos. Certificate issued by international organization recognized by Arcotel. FCC is on the list. It is recognized by Arcotel. No local rep is required, no labeling requirements. Certificates do not expire, and the lead time is 4 to 6 weeks. And that covers Arcotel. Now let's take a look at Conatel, Paraguay. Conatel is the regulator of the country's national telecommunications system. The agency is responsible for verifying products complies with applicable regulations in order to commercialize in Paraguay. All products that utilize radio frequency as well as equipment that connects to the public networks require type approval and certification. Equipment homologation is mandatory for wireless and telecommunications products, such as car audio system, RF transceivers, BT speaker, modems, wireless microphones, radio frequency ID equipment. Testing in Paraguay is not required. Each unit of equipment and telecommunications equipment approved or marketed in Paraguay must have an identification in a visible place accessible by the user composed by the name of the equipment manufacturer, the brand of the equipment, the model of the equipment, and the label with the logo of Conatel and the registration number or code that corresponds to the certificate of the homologation granted. In the occasion of the request for the approval, the manufacturer must present a graphic, image, or photograph of the label that will be displayed on the equipment or apparatus of telecommunications, specifying the place and the way in which it will be placed. In the event that the telecommunications equipment or apparatus is imported, the following provisions shall be observed. The label must be inserted before entering the country. The name and address of the supplier in the country needs to be included in the identification. Such information may be recorded in the user menu. FCC mark or CE mark on the label will ensure smoother entry of the product through the custom importation process. For renewal, renewal can be submitted at any time prior to or after expiration date, but if a certification expires, products cannot be sold until the renewal certification is issued. And no local rep is required, no family model grouping, validity is 5 years, and the lead time is usually around 8 to 10 weeks, depends on the product.
Yearly updates for Conatel. 6 GHz band authorization, Wi-Fi 6E, Resolution Directory O number 1035/2025, issued April 2025, 5.925-6.425 MHz band now approved for low-power wireless access systems, LPWA, like Wi-Fi 6E. Technical standards NTC-RF-5925:2025 details operational parameters. Device requirements must disable 6425-7125 MHz portion of the band to avoid interference. Manufacturers need to apply for partial amendments for existing certificates and add a warning label to the user manual. 3.3 to 3.7 GHz band allocation 5G. Resolution Directory number 1752/2024, published July 2024. 3.300-3.700 MHz band is now allocated for mobile services facilitating 5G deployment. Decree number 3171/2023, issued November 2023, requires cellular mobile devices must meet specific 3GPP and ITSI standards, including 3GPP TS 51.010-1 and various ITSI TS standards.
So that covers Conatel Paraguay. Now let's take a look at the next country, Peru, MTC. MTC is the Ministry of Transportation and Communications of Peru, which is responsible for the control, supervision, and type approval certification process to assure devices will properly use the radio spectrum in country. Mandatory compliance requirements for wireless and telecom products. RF equipment with radiated power greater than 10 megawatts require a homologation certificate. There is one exemption to note. If the output transmit power is below 10 megawatts and it operates in unlicensed bands, then approval is voluntary. Conformity assessment schemes. Homologation of radio. For certification procedure, registration of import equipment certified by US or Canada, and registration procedure. For certification is for products without FCC or IC. For registration is for products with FCC or IC. Certification requirements. Testing is not required in Peru. MTC accepts FCC or IC grants as proof of compliance, which can be submitted with the required submittal documents detailing the company name, brand name, product name, and model number, along with internal and external product photos. The FCC or IC marking must be on the product label, depending on which agency grant was used to obtain approval with MTC. This registration number will be needed by the importer in order to clear customs. Local wrap is not required, labeling is not required, it is valid for permanent. The lead time is usually around 4 to 8 weeks, depends on the products.
Yearly updates for MTC. Supreme Decree number 004-2025, enacted March 2025, formalizes the regulation for 5G deployment, includes new streamlined approaches to spectrum allocation and investment requirements. Cellular device blacklist. Effective April 22nd, 2024, MTC created 2 lists for cellular equipment. White list is for valid devices. Blacklist is for blocked devices. Initiative aims to discourage the theft of mobile phones by making it harder to use stolen devices. Equipment using radio spectrum with a rated power greater than 10 milliwatts requires a homologation certification from the MTC. Cellular product applications require manufacturers to include information related to the Cell Broadcasting Services, SISMATE, Peru's early warning system.
And that covers Peru MTC certification and approval. Now let's take a look at the next country, Uruguay. Eurosec is the regulatory unit of communication service of Uruguay. It is responsible for verifying the compliance of telecommunications equipment with applicable regulations in order for commercialization and distribution in Uruguay. Mandatory compliance requirements for wireless and telecom products. For example, GPS tracker, wireless microphone, mobile phone, modem radio alarms, and computers. Eurosec does not require in-country testing. FCC and CE reports are required. Local wrap is not required, no labeling requirements, but it is highly advised to include the FCC or CE marking on the product, depending on which report the Eurosec approval is based. Validity is 15 years, lead time is 2 to 4 weeks. The 5.4 to 5.7 GHz band are not allowed in Uruguay. Radio module approval is allowed. Change to model name, brand name, applicant name, or any technical characteristics requires a new approval, and no family model approvals. And that covers Uruguay Eurosec. Now let's take a look at the last country, Venezuela, CONATEL. CONATEL is the National Commission of Telecommunication of Venezuela. Mandatory compliance requires for wireless and telecom products, for example, portable transceivers, mobile phones, RF power amplifier, transceivers, and transmitter equipment for data networks. No in-country testing is required in CONATEL. Documentation needed, user guide in Spanish, technical specification, photos, reports from accredited laboratory, certificates from other countries. The certificate can be from including USA, Canada, EU, Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. Local rep is not required. Labeling requirement, FCC and CE mark on product label. CONATEL will issue a stamped receipt upon receipt of application package, which the manufacturer can use to start the importation of the product into Venezuela, while it is still in the agency review process at CONATEL. The agency does not provide certifications. Instead, the approved products are listed on the CONATEL website.
Yearly updates for CONATEL. Free use ruling number 064 on June 2025 amends the administrative ruling for qualifying free use equipment, 5G rollout, and 2G sunset. 2023 to 2025 plan aims to phase out 2G, introduce 5G by the end of 2025. Expansion of 4G networks. Conatel is prioritizing the expansion of 4G infrastructure with an installation target for new base stations in 2025. The current goal is for 90% of the population to have access to 4G network by the end of 2025. Administrative Provision Number 217 and Circular Number SNAT/INA/2025/0001602. As of September 2025, Conatel has issued a new requirement for mandatory certification for all imported telecommunication equipment. This will affect a broad range of telecommunication equipment, including portable receivers, mobile phones, RF power amplifiers, and equipment for data networks.
This concludes our webinar of the South America Market Access, Certifications and Approval for Electrical Equipment and Wireless Products. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in understanding the process for approval and certifications, as well as what requirements are applicable to your products. Vista Compliance Lab specializes in certifications, approvals, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency device. We are a 17025 accredited EMCRF compliance test lab and a 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the US, Canada, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan. And we provide certification and approvals for all product types in countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with regulatory updates, follow us online. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on the information presented today, or any general inquiries, you can always reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
This concludes our webinar of the South American Market Access Certification and Approvals for Electrical Equipment and Wireless Products. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in understanding the process for approvals and certification, as well as what requirements are applicable to your products. Vista Compliance Lab specializes in certification, approvals, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency devices. We are a 17025 accredited EMCRF compliance test lab and a 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the US, Canada, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan, and we provide certification and approvals for all product types in countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with regulatory updates, follow us online, and if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on the information presented today, or any general inquiries, you can reach us at any time at info@vista-compliance.com. Thank you for your time, and please have a wonderful day.